program بالأحضان, a show with an accent for those without one. Now we're talking about Indiana. Of all the places, now they are really working so hard to guarantee or freedom of religion in Indiana. Freedom of religion, this is the law. It's been, stated this, I thought that was given, this country based on religious freedom, not from religion, but for religion, but because you are gay. But anyway, with that thing is remind me what happened a few years ago when a bunch of Somali or Muslim cab driver kind of refused service to customer or passenger that they have dogs or alcohol. Would that law protect Muslim drivers have the right to turn down those people who don't follow Islamic Sharia or Islamic? And that was, of course, was shoved under the rug. And now Somali driver have to take any driver, no matter what, drunk or otherwise. Now we have here, usually we have somebody who follow this politics locally and nationally come explain to us what the heck's going on. We have Bob Meek, he's a political analyst. You see him on public radio. Now he has his own talk show on KFAI. And we like to welcome you, Bob.
Thank you.
We talked about religious freedom law. And I thought this is in the Constitution, this is what?
Yeah, it's the First Amendment.
First Amendment, and we don't need to. Why we tinker with the First Amendment? I thought those guys, the conservatives, don't want to touch the Constitution.
Well, it's what's going on in Indiana and Arkansas mirrors what they tried to do in Arizona a couple of years ago. And in Arizona, there was an outcry from sporting groups, business groups, et cetera, entertainment groups, saying, you do this and you're going to lose tourism, you're going to lose business, et cetera. And so the very conservative governor there, at the time, Jan Brewer, she vetoed the measure. But the folks in Indiana and Arkansas didn't get the message. And so they adopted a law that was very specifically attuned to business owners being able to say, I won't photograph your wedding. I won't provide the flowers for your wedding. I won't provide the cake for your wedding.
Can you make a law specifically single out segment or a population like gay or Muslims or Arab Muslims? My Arab Muslim wedding, I'm not gonna, you guys take your hijab off or something.
I mean, the way they were playing it is if the business person has this moral religious objection to the same-sex marriage, well, there's no way you could compel them to sell you the wedding cake or to photograph the ceremony. And what that goes against is the basis of the law of commerce in the U.S., which is if you're taking advantage of the public highways for people to come to your business, if you're taking advantage of the public police and fire to protect your business, both those highways and the police and fire, they're paid for by all the taxpayers, including the gay, lesbian, Muslim, Asian. And so when you put the open sign up in your window, when you decide to go into commerce, you're taking advantage of public services, and therefore you can't discriminate.
You're open to the public.
Right. And so if you go back some 50 years ago, we had this same argument over the lunch counters in South Carolina or North Carolina and other southern states, where they simply weren't going to serve black people, African Americans, who came into the lunch counters. They said, we're all white and we're not going to serve you.
Yeah, you disturb us. You're inconvenient for us.
Yeah, and it only...
I want to eat my donuts.
It only broke after the local people boycotted those the Woolworth lunch counter for something like 6 months. And so once you put economic pressure on, okay, well, that's what's happened in Indiana and Arkansas. good Lord, when Walmart came out against this law and said, this will give our state of Arkansas a terrible reputation. Well, Walmart is not only the biggest store in Arkansas, it's the biggest store in the world and in the United States. And by the way, they have been the biggest donor to Republicans and to conservative causes of any corporation. And they're coming out and saying this. And then these folks, and everybody's, I'm not going to question anybody's motives here, but the people in Indianapolis and the people in Little Rock, they have invested in having tech centers and recruitment of young professionals into their business. They want to be seen as part of the high-tech 21st century. Mm-hmm. And once this law got sort of exploded and, people were hearing about it all over the country, 19 high-tech companies, Oracle, et cetera, Apple, came out against it. They say, if you don't change that law, we don't want to do business in Indiana anymore. Mm-hmm. And
so this is what the gun of forces issue. They were looking at not from a principle and human rights and civil rights, and the pressure was going to be an economic pressure?
Exactly. I mean, this is an economic issue. If you go back to, which for me is like yesterday, if you go back to 1969, that was the first time in America that gay people stood up for themselves, and when they were getting beat up by the police in New York, they fought back for the first time, okay? Well, spin forward from 69 to 2015, this is the first time straight people, straight business people, major national straight business people have stood up and fought back because they don't want to mess with this. And what they say is, we've got all kinds of employees and we've got all kinds of people who shop in our stores. And you know something? We don't want different laws all over the place, and we don't want to have to be discriminated against people.
How is this different than Howard Schultz with his Race Together? You have a corporation try to, social activism by CEOs like a frat boys. They think they can solve race issue in this country on a cup of coffee.
The Starbucks people, yeah. That people see as a well-intentioned act by someone who actually wasn't as smart and informed as a typical barista, who would have said, well, you're out of your mind. People, they're on their way to work. Yeah. And so they don't necessarily know those other people in the restaurant.
I know we can be cynical about this guy and what his intention is. We don't know his intention. But I think it seems like I question his business acumen and business savvy because, coffee shop here is not for conversation about, we don't talk about, even not conversation, period. People have their laptop, drive-through. You want to have a conversation, go to a Cairo coffee shop or an Arab coffee shop.
And you hit on a very interesting thing, which is nobody wants to have a conversation. I go to Barnes, I work out at my home. I go to Barnes and Noble to meet people at those little tables around there. If I just started talking to somebody,
you'd be kicked out of
they would like, what the heck are you doing?
And you are in the bookstore.
Yeah.
People are curious. You should be curious.
But, I mean, the reason they're there rather than a public library is so that they're protected.
By the law.
You can't have discussions, or, if you follow the old guidebooks, they said, you can't talk about death, you can't talk about taxes, you can't talk about religion, and you can't talk about race. Now, you can have Thanksgiving otherwise.
Yeah. You can consume, you can do. We'll go back to I know he's waving me off here, but we'll go back to the religious freedom. This is this is a state law, tinkering with, there is a federal law, with First Amendment, or what's the history of the religion of freedom?
In 1993, a liberal moderate Democrat, President Bill Clinton, signed the Federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And its purpose at that time were Native Americans out on the West Coast had been arrested, fined, whatever, for peyote, for the use of peyote in their religious ceremonies. And, their argument was, okay, you may not want peyote to be used on the National Guard base or something, but that's not who we are. We've been using peyote in religious ceremonies for 300 years. Mm-hmm. Well, the law was used, the law was enacted to clarify and to protect that. And that federal law and the next 17 state laws only applied to government interference. So, you couldn't send the police to stop someone on the peyote. Uh-huh. It did not apply to for-profit corporations.
I see.
And when they got into Arkansas and Indiana, suddenly in the back rooms, they had twisted the language to make everybody a corporation, or anybody could apply to be one.
Corporation is people?
Right. And so suddenly I'm selling wedding cakes. And you as a gay person come in for the wedding cake, they want me to be able to turn you down because you're a gay person. Well, as Barney Frank, the preeminent gay public official in the United States, said recently, now, if the couple happened to want a pornographic image on the cake, you as a business person could say, I don't put pornographic images on any of my cakes, so I won't do business with you.
So for any weddings?
I've never done it for anybody, and I'm not going to do it for you. But if you provide decorated and maybe little figurines of the two people getting married on the cake, if that's something that you do for everybody, and you've had a history of doing it for everybody, you have to do it. And the whole thing is that these, the folks who support these laws, aside from the great religionists, they have been stopped in trying to fight marriage equality.
Well, the whole, go ahead.
So now, this is a rearguard action to say, oh, we're going to stop all the people who would enable those weddings to take place. And who this benefits are the organizations, the American Family Council, these different groups, Advance America, sort of things. They have to raise money. And they can't raise money over marriage equality anymore because the Supreme Court, come June, is going to approve it for the whole country. So they were inventing.
I see. So it's really, that's what it is.
Yeah, it's
politics and all money and all of that. But it seems like, the whole idea of all this law is to protect people, and we have a history, very horrible history of single out groups. So that's what it is. America, at the time they were writing all those amendments and such, many people had fled Europe because these doctrinaire, this is my Anglican country and this is my Catholic country and this is my Lutheran country. So that's why we say this is freedom of religion, not from religion.
Well, it's not freedom to discriminate on the basis of religion. In fact, as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wrote in his Time magazine column, this is anti-American discrimination in the guise of protecting religion.
Bob, thank you so much. Always enlightening to have you here. Bob Meek is a political analyst. We're talking about the new Tinkerin law of religious freedom law in Indiana. We'll see you next week. Assalamu alaikum and God bless you all.